Hi, this is Pamela Gropey Art, and today we are going to learn how to paint a mason jar or a glass jar, whatever you want to call it. Now they come in wide mouth, narrow mouth. I prefer the wide mouth. And I also have a jar that has kind of squared off edges. So I set up my scene. This one I had some hydrangeas in it, and then I paint my design. Now you may be wondering why many times on my blog and website I teach a single component like the jar instead of a jar of flowers. Well, the longer tutorials I typically create as workshops, and I break up the videos into smaller portions because it can go on for a couple hours, and it just makes it easier, especially for new painters, to break it up and learn that way. It's not so overwhelming. You don't have to spend 2 hours in front of the easel. You may only have 10-15 minutes to paint, and painting daily is recommended because you learn a lot as you do. And with the individual components as I make them, like I have how to paint daisies, how to paint poppies, how to paint black-eyed Susies, then you can create your own still life paintings combining all of the components. So I'll show you the workshop I'm working on. Let me reach over here and get it. It's this mason jars with hydrangeas and daisies. Now this is on my palette board get up that I did a tutorial on and showed you how to create this backdrop, and now I'm doing this as the workshop, and the videos, like I said, are broken up into smaller portions so they're more consumable, easily consumable. So that being said, let's get to painting our mason jar. So here is our surface. This is just a wrapped canvas that I have a gray background on. This is one I had painted on, and I have a whole tutorial on how I do this background, and I will link it below in the description box. So today we are going to use a 3/4 inch flat. You can use the size of a flat brush, whatever you like. I have Folk Art Aqua, Folk Art Wicker White, and I have floating medium, which I see I need some more floating medium on my palette. And I have dampened my brush and then touched it on a rag so it doesn't have too much liquid in it, but is still damp. So see if I got my palette in here where you can see. So right here I'm loading my brush with the floating medium, and then I just work it a little bit into the brush. I touch into the aqua, and then I work it into my brush. Now I'm going to start on the lid, and I'm going to follow my lines. Sometimes I just paint this right on and I make like a rectangle here, and then the way I'm doing this I can't really see my lines because my brush gets in the way, and I'm working around the camera, so bear with me if I do this. I don't always just pull a straight line. Sometimes I work in increments like that. I chop it along, and I start out really light. That way if I make a mistake it would be easier to fix. So it's not rounded. You see that? I could pull it up with my finger. So I'm getting it in there, just the indication. You can reinforce that later. And now I'm going to reload my brush. I got more floating medium. I'm going to go into the aqua on that corner and work it in. And then you can go down or you can go up. I'm going to go up since I can see better that way. And just follow my lines. Now I add the floating medium because I want this paint to flow and I want it to be transparent. Now it doesn't have to be the same transparency or not solid or the same. It could be lighter here, darker here. That's what I'm trying to explain. And that just adds to the look of a jar. You don't want a solid line because this is glass and you can see through glass. So you notice in here you can see the back of the jar. So we'll go in and do that. See right here, it starts at the corner and you just kind of work along. So then I'll finish this line. Come into the neck. Now you can add more color to the jar itself if you wish. I many times will do that after I've put the flower stems in. I just get that as smooth as I can. Sometimes I'll only do portions of the jar, and what I mean is, like, I'll thicken up the color right along the corners, kind of let it fade off. There. I do want that. I can darken that later. And then streak some colors on it. I don't want it opaque, I want it transparent. And then I'll go back with just my corner. I reloaded with floating medium, got some more in the corner, and I will put in some lines to indicate the lines for screwing on a jar. And you can add more color as you feel you need. Try to start from the top and lift as you go down. If you start here, you're going to create a line. So, see, I just created a line. Now the white, I'll let this dry a little bit before I go over it, because if I don't, I'll just, well, it looks like it's dried enough. I would obscure it if it was too wet. So I'm going to add a touch of highlight. So I'm getting some white on my brush, and you can wait till the aqua is dry, or you can add it when it's wet. And you notice I did it in a following the line of the outward of the jar, outside of the jar, and that creates the shadow properly as it would hit. Now if you need to, get a jar, set it in front of you, and put, if you want water in it, fill it with a little bit of water, and then look at where the light's hitting it. And then that's where you add your highlights, and you'll see them. They'll sparkle on your glass. So you add your highlights. Now, the brush was a little wet, so watch what happens. See, I had dripped water there and it made a spot. That's just one way you can create effects if you like, or it could be a mistake, however you want to view it. All right, that's how you add sparks of light. But also, a lot of times, you will want to wait until after you've put your design, your stems in here for your flowers, before you highlight, because the highlight needs to show on top of your stems. So someone said they needed to know how to do a water line. A water line should be faint, and again, I would do this part of it after the stems are in here, or even all of it, because you're going to do like the back of the water line if you have just a few stems in there, as well as the front, and you will be able to visually see it with a jar in front of you. I had to take my jar out. It had bugs coming out of it, of the flowers that I had in it. So again, this is going to be circular. Not circular, but not straight across. So just a tiny bit of a curve. And the water line kind of breaks up when you're viewing it. So you don't necessarily want to come across with a straight solid line. And when you have your stems, I'm just going to draw some fake stems in here, and then you do the water line when they're still wet. You kind of break them up, and that's how it happens when you're viewing it, your stems through the glass with the water in it. Now this is kind of off because, like I said, I'm at an angle, so I'm not visually seeing it straight. And if you need to fix like the edges, just go back up over the edges like that. And what I meant was the water line kind of looked goofy in there. So I know that's a lot to take in, and I kind of bounced around, but that is basically how you paint a jar. And as I said, get a jar out and look at it. You'll recognize how much of an angle to put here. and vary the sizes as you see fit. Like the neck can be narrower, and then it would have more of a shoulder. And let me see how this would come in further and then come out. And you do that by giving it an angle. Just draw an angle from the neck and then pull it out. But once you get flowers, like for a still life in your jar, you're not going to be looking at this very much, because leaves, petals, even flower heads many times will cover much of the neck of your jar. So give yourself some grace when you're painting it, and if you make a mistake on your jar in your still life, put a leaf over it or a flower and it will be just fine. And like I said, these would normally be a green. So then I would come back over, if I wanted, just a touch of the color and just go over them so it looks like they're behind the blue jar. Now if you're doing a clear jar, you're not going to do that. But there you have it, how to paint a mason jar. Well, I hope you enjoyed our mason jar painting tutorial. Now you notice I filled it in a little bit more since I left off on the video. That's very easy for you to do. You just add a little more paint and you streak in some more color. And as I said in the video, I would do that after I had the stems in, so you could see that the stems are a little bit discolored by the color of the jar. And you can see the highlights, the water line, and even the back, but they're very faint. You don't have to do this. You can just leave it with hints of color in, like around the outline. So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Come on back for more painting lessons, tutorials, workshops, tips and tricks, and fun here at Pamela Gropey Art. And I will let you know that I am going to do a series of workshops of flowers in mason jars. There'll be geraniums, hydrangeas, daisies, all kinds of different lessons. So I wanted you to have the basics, so you could do your own paintings with the other tutorials that I have available of different flowers and leaves, or you can come back and see how I put them together and paint along with me. I'll see you in the next video.